Welcome back then folks to special projects in the world of Forza Horizon 5, and of course last week we did a whole bunch of builds in Gran Turismo 7. Now we're doing 3 special projects tunes throughout this week on Monday, Wednesday and Friday in Horizon 5. We're kicking off first of all with a car which is probably one of the easiest, one of the simplest and definitely one of the cheapest builds to do because the car itself is only 25 grand. It is of course the Monaro VXR, and what we are replicating sounds pretty simple on the surface and all you need to do to it is just a couple of things really, and yet the end result is a car which in real life is legitimately one of the rarest cars on the road in the UK, called the Monaro VXR 500. Now if you're wondering, does that refer to the horsepower? Yes it does, and that's why it's such a special car. This is a borderline 190 mile an hour version of the VXR Monaro, which is already a 400 horsepower 6 litre V8. This one though is supercharged to 500 horsepower. It also has upgraded suspension, and what I've done is taken a couple of other liberties when it comes to, for example, slightly better brakes, because I could imagine certain owners doing that, and of course better tyres as well, which all makes a difference. Now if you do want to just grab the livery and the tune setup on the car, of course I flashed on screen the 2 codes that you can use to search for those. If on the other hand you prefer to do it yourself, you know, livery wise or tune setup wise, then of course that is where the rest of the video comes in. So for those who just want to download it, thanks for the downloads, I appreciate the support. But for those who do want to do it yourself, what do you actually need to change? Well, first things first, before I talk about the visuals, because it basically just looks like a black Monaro, but there's a little bit more to it than that. So as far as first of all the conversions, all you need to change is the aspiration. Now unfortunately, and there's not really much you can do about this, it actually makes it technically a little bit too powerful. It should be about 493 horses with a supercharger. This makes it 520. So it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, oh no, we've got too much power, but unfortunately because in Forza, unlike Gran Turismo, you can't restrict the power, like with a restrictor plate or an ECU map, you pretty much have to work with what you've got. So unless you want to modify it without a supercharger, which kind of goes against the spirit of the build, then you have to have a little bit more. The centrifugal supercharger has a little bit less, but even then it's not that much better. I do like, however, that they factor in the extra weight, because it probably should weigh more than the normal car. So then what I've done aside from that is, if we jump into the tyre section, just for the sake of it, and this wasn't an official thing as far as I know, but I have increased the track width just a little bit on the back and also just a little bit on the front as well, just to increase that stability a little bit more. For the tyres, I've upgraded them to semi-slicks. You could argue maybe that's a bit of overkill, but at the end of the day, it's not like an owner in real life couldn't do that. Of course, if you plan to use your car on the track or even on the road, you can upgrade your tyres at pretty much any time. So I would say that's a fairly realistic thing to do. And the main reason why I've done that is so that you can actually maximise the fact that it is of course now in A class. If you leave the tyres standard, it's pretty low and there's no point in having the extra power if you can't really use it, especially given it's a 500 horsepower rear-wheel drive car. So upgrading the tyres I would say is more of a necessity really, rather than a replica. Like I said, as far as the suspension, it is slightly lower and slightly stiffer in real life, so that is great. It means we can fit the sports suspension and pretty much job done. As far as the brakes, like I said, I have opted to do something which I don't think they necessarily did, which is upgrade those. They still look visually appropriate to the car, and I guess if you don't want to do that, you could leave them off, but there's not really any reason why not. Again, it's the kind of thing that I'm sure some owners actually did, and I believe there's only something like a dozen of these on the road. It's an ultra rare car, and one of the curious things, speaking to the visuals, is that sometimes they were actually offered in a debadged form. So you may actually see a VXR 500, but it doesn't necessarily look like one. My opinion on that is, why on earth would you buy a 500 and then want to hide that? Because it's not like it's a subtle car to begin with, so you may as well show it off, given how important the vehicle is. And speaking of the visuals, just while we're still in the tuning shop, what I've done to this is, yes, I've painted it black. It's a little bit more to it than that. I've painted it chrome black. And even though it certainly doesn't look chrome, it's actually the opposite effect. It's less reflective than the normal black. So it's like a super black, not quite matte black, not quite Vanta black, because I didn't want to go overboard, but much darker black. And I think it really suits the car. And then on the back, you can see that I've also, right there on the badge, added the 500, and also on the side even, I've also added the 500 badging, and it's very small, but you can just see I've added Supercharged written underneath, which is accurate to the real car. as well as painting the calipers red, and that's pretty much it for the visuals. So like I said, I haven't done too much to it, either mechanically or visually, but the changes that are there are subtle and of course appropriate to the vehicle. If we abandon the setup because we haven't actually changed anything, it is of course a little bit too quick compared to real life. In real life, the quoted numbers are, I think, 186 miles an hour. There's no way that's the only top speed. I guarantee it's quicker than that, but 186 on paper, and they say 4.9 to 60, which also seems a bit slow to me. I mean, I guess with wheel spin, but I was under the impression that the 400 horsepower version could already do 4.9 to 60, so I don't know what's going on there, but sure, if that's what they say, then I guess. So in other words, it's just a little bit quicker on acceleration. 4.6 ain't too bad. 210 miles an hour though, I mean, I could believe that, to be honest, in real life, but yeah, it's a little bit too much. As far as the tyre pressures, there's nothing changed. For most of this, in fact, there's really nothing too much which we've done, and the only slight difference, oh actually I forgot to include this, I did change it to a race differential, so I should have mentioned that, but you can tell now anyway. I have changed the acceleration to 35%. Very simple, incredibly affordable, dirt cheap in fact, as far as modifying the car, and in A-Class, up around 770 points. Who knows if you want to use a rear-wheel drive car, or of course for some events you have to use a rear-wheel drive car, or even this being a modern muscle car, which of course certain seasonal events or whatever might require that, you could actually end up using it. So on the question of using the car, we of course need to jump out into an event, so I can show you what it's like in practice. I didn't really have super high hopes for it, to be honest, because at the end of the day, you've basically taken what was already a muscle car, we've given it 100 horsepower more, or more like 120 more in the case of this, with a big old supercharger, slightly lower suspension, slightly better brakes, significantly better tyres, but they're still not racing slicks, and really modified nothing else. We haven't changed the gear ratios, we haven't given it camber or tow or anything really like that, so how different could it really be? And it could end up just being a rampant wheel spinning, maybe great drift car, but not necessarily a great performance car. The irony is, it's great to drive. I really, really like driving this car, and of course it's my kind of sensibilities. I love cars like this anyway in real life, and yeah, if you are a Monaro fan, chances are you're already probably familiar with the 500 anyway, but yeah, if you decide to download this, it is definitely one of the more subtle special projects which I've done, both for the build and certainly visually as well. But for those who know what it is, you know why it's special, and yeah, if you do decide to use it, whether you download the livery and the tune that I've done via the codes, or if you decide to do it yourself, maybe your own black paint with whatever, or your own build setup for it, either way, I hope you enjoy it, and of course give the other special projects that I've done in Forza Horizon 5 a look. There is a link to that down in the description. 2 more builds to come this week on Wednesday and Friday, so check out those as well, and for now, thanks for watching.